Hello and many thanks for staying with us here on the program Global Morning. A lot of concerns as Nigerians are now calling on the federal government to conduct fresh tests to confirm the quality of petrol sold in the filling stations across the country. This came amid allegations from a viral video that the petrol from the Nigerian National Petroleum Company Limited does not last long in fuel tanks. This is even as the petroleum product retailer owners of Nigeria said that the fuel from NNPC is one of the quality standard. And our NNPC have denied that claim, says that it sells the substandard petrol with a high burn rate. In a statement through the spokesperson, he said it was reacting to the viral video that the petrol does not last longer. A lot of reactions surrounding that situation. A content creator came out with that video and sparked a whole lot of concern. Is it Dangote Refinery? Is it NNPC? Which one is real? Which one is fake? Which one is substandard? Joining us this morning is Truly Olabode, oil and gas consultant. He's my guest this morning to review all of this development. Thanks so much for being part of the program this morning.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
Yes. The last time we were here, we were talking about the refineries, particular refineries, Warri refineries. But what has really sparked controversy of recent has been the standard of our product, the petrol product. Tell us, does it look that NNPC product is less of standard?
Okay. Thank you. And thanks for having me. Always a pleasure to be here. So, at the root of all of this is a lot of ignorance. So let me first start with the things that are known, because in science, you usually go from known to unknown. When they wanted to get a cure to smallpox or to cure malaria, they looked at the symptoms and then they moved from what was known in order to get a solution to. In the press release that was issued, what NNPC said, which somehow has not been captured, but it's on the press release and it's everywhere, is that the particular fuel that is distributed in Lagos, where the content creator did the experiment, is gotten from Dangote Refinery, because NNPC actually buys from Dangote as well as imports. So in the particular pace that he was referring to, that fuel came from Dangote Refinery. So that's at the baseline. The second part of it is science. Now, for those who are not science, I need to go from a bit of the psychology of science to the root of science itself. One thing that unites all science fields, whether it is the biological sciences or the natural sciences, physics, chemistry, and all that, is what you call the repeatable process. In other words, things are science because they give the exact same results if they follow the same conditions. So a simple example is that water boils at 100 degrees centigrade at standard temperature and pressure. That is science. What that means is that if you carry water to Alaska or to Cape Town or to Tokyo or even to my village, as long as it is under standard temperature and pressure and you put a condition that heats it to 100 degrees, water must boil. So if it does not boil, then it is not water. Something else is it. Now, for crude oil, there are a number of petroleum products that are there. There are some gases, there is petrol, there is diesel and all that. There is a chemical composition that makes up petrol, as different from kerosene. Once it is petrol and you subject it to the same chemical reactions, it must give you the same results. There may be a little differences in terms of maybe the content of it, like the petrol that they use in the UK, they have a significant amount of ethanol in it. That one makes it to, because it's not a mixture, so the chemical composition is totally different. So if the refinery, because the refinery is agnostic, it is a machine, if the refinery produces petrol and is certified to be petrol, the discrepancies that they showed in that experiment cannot be true. So it is only possible if it is elements of different chemical composition. And that is why it would have been nice if it was a proper experiment. So if it was a proper experiment, there would have been the proper video which showed how they took it from the pump and all that, rather than cutting it into a few seconds, because what has been eliminated is a number of hours, and anything can happen there. So, and that is where I say that there's a scientific, in terms of the science of it. Let's forget about blending. In terms of science, once you put a component of crude oil that forms within the same compound, within the same chemical reaction, you are supposed to get the same results. So on those two bases, though that thing can be faulted. On the first basis of the fact that the particular fuel that he did the experiment with is actually Dangote's fuel, and on the second basis that it faults the foundations of the thermodynamical laws of fluids and fluid mechanics.
Because I feel the content creator went on with that due to the speculation. Many persons were already speculating about the standard of that, even when the regulators are silenced. Now, you come to Abuja, the MRS filling stations are now having more queues, compared to NPC. So if you said, look, in Lagos, what we have is the Dangote refineries, product from the Dangote refinery. How about the situations here in Abuja? Do you feel that there is a widespread of the information that probably may be causing that panic?
So what you are talking about is a totally different issue, in the sense that if people, first of all, like I said, the very first thing I said is that there's a lot of ignorance. Just like when Ebola came.
But tell me that.
Hold on. I just explained something. I just spent some minutes explaining, except you did not get it. When Ebola came into the place, there was a rumor that was going around that if you use salt to bath, it will call you of Ebola. And if you drink salt, some people almost had liver failure from drinking salt. Ignorance is ignorance. You get the fact that people are rushing to MRS does not mean they are doing it out of knowledge.
Are they experiencing it? Because for once,
I have already explained to you that it is scientifically impossible.
From the experience,
they can say they experience anything. It's like some people say, some people use toothpaste.
So majority can be wrong.
Majority have always been wrong throughout history.
From experience,
majority. I am saying that majority cannot nullify science. But simply because we are plenty does not mean science is wrong. Majority cannot nullify science. Science is science.
But why do we have this product? Is it not to better lives of the people?
And I'm saying that if they claim what they are claiming, there is a lot of lies in between. For example, your body has a liver. Will you say because in my own hometown we don't have livers, does that mean it is true? Because there is a way the human body is created. That is science. And I'm saying that when you have a chemical composition that has between that C4 and C7, C8 or C10, whatever, that range, that falls within petrol, they must behave according to the scientific laws of petrol. It does not matter if 1 million people say that it is not. That is not enough to invalidate science. This is not art. It's art that has 1,000 answers to a particular problem. In science, there's just one answer. And that one answer has a process. That is the difference.
All right, show me. The purpose we are having this conversation is for Nigerians to understand, because at the end of the day, all of the sciences is to reflect on the life of every Nigerian who is buying the product. Because if we take, for instance, the concern, and how can they probably justify this? Yes, you may have said many or the numbers of persons saying that this is the right thing may be totally wrong, but how do we put to rest this tension or these speculations? How do they prove? What is a part of the regulators? How do they come out to clarify all of this so that all of these tensions can be put to rest?
In the first place, how did you even get the product itself from crude oil? It went through a scientific process.
I agree.
It is not people's opinion. It's not like people got their opinions together and they started debating, and in the process of debating, crude oil just transformed into petrol. No, it went through a scientific process, and this scientific process is more than 100 years old. They have been doing these things for over a century. It is not suddenly going to become faulty in year 2025. So there is something about human nature that we in Nigeria miss totally. There is a personal responsibility not to be ignorant. It is not the responsibility of the state. And one example of that is ignorance of the law. If you run foul of a law, you cannot plead ignorance in court. Ignorance of the law excuses no man. Now, if as a person you are doing a business and you run into the hands of fraudulent people out of ignorance, it is still your responsibility. If people are posting things on social media and we don't have the capacity personally to verify and vet, and we don't have a process to verify and vet, if you fall victim of the ignorance being perpetrated, it is a personal responsibility. The idea that people should leave their normal basic job that is supposed to bring progress to society and be attending to every busybody, every paid what do you call it, every paid person that is trying to cause commotion, which will leading to chaos. Because if they have to be responding to every rumor, they will not have a job. And let me tell you, in best practice of public relations, organizations don't respond to rumors. There are a lot of rumors in the air that there are certain drinks that are related to 666 and all that, and people should not drink it. Have you ever seen those companies respond? There is rumors in the atmosphere that Microsoft is giving certain gifts when they have no ideas to eat. Did you see them respond? Real, solid, stable, progressive organizations that know what they do, they don't respond to every rumor. It is in Nigeria that people believe that if somebody starts a rumor and you don't drop all you are doing to come and defend the rumor, that it is right. It's just Nigerians that say that. It has absolutely no bearing with reality. And like I said, if you believe falsehood instead of the truth, the responsibility is on you. It is, and freedom of speech means anybody can say anything. But for you to absorb and not be able to decipher between facts and truth, it's your responsibility. And that's it. So if people, out of ignorance, choose a particular line that is detriment to themselves, it is for them to learn along the line. And that is life. So that is why it is important. In fact, it is incumbent upon them. This is what I'm talking about, is secondary school chemistry. Is secondary school chemistry. Anybody that has passed chemistry in secondary school should be able to understand what I'm saying. So it is not, I'm not talking about Ifaluyi technology and all that. It's just basic fundamental science.
All right. Do you think the NNPC is still importing fuel into the country?
They are.
Or with our refineries or Dangote refineries?
So this, we've gone through all this in the past. They say for the purpose of energy security, they must. And secondly, Dangote refinery and the current refineries, even at maximum production, cannot satisfy national needs.
Still have to import?
Yes. I mean, it's not for me to say, you can call them. I mean, I'm not a spokesperson for NNPC. But there's a reason why. So it is the thing. There's all this talk about this should not be, that should not be, but people also don't understand the fundamentals. One of the responsibilities of the regulator and the national carrier is to ensure that there is energy security. Energy security is based on two prongs: energy availability and energy affordability. Dangote cannot meet that, even in full production, and it is not yet at full production, even at maximum production.
It's less than an NPC.
That is not energy security. That is, we are talking about availability. When are they sell?
Now.
They are both affordable. The differences they are talking about is less than 15 naira.
But the NNPC ought to probably be lesser than that.
On what basis?
As government entity.
So government entity should not cover its cost. People, they are business entities. You understand? People sell when they look at. So the purposes of competition is so that the people are not cheated, whether by private, whether by government. There is nothing that says government must not make profit. There is nothing that says government should not cover its cost. So they probably have 100 times more staff than Dangote has. They probably have a lot more things. So they have to look at their own cost of production, and on the basis of that, come out. And because it's a free market, everybody can come out with whatever they want to come out with, and then they compete.
So do you think this is sustainable, the free market principle?
If you don't, you want, the only other alternative is communism. The world has started communism. If you don't want democracy, because at the bedrock of democracy is the free market. So if you don't want that, then you move to communism. That's the only alternative.
But what if, I mean, situation wakes up that the price is skyrocketed to the point where Nigerians cannot be able to afford?
That is the reality we have to face. And that is part of the reason why we shouldn't act in ignorance. Because when we start to push a narrative, because we have an ulterior interest, those are the kind of things that can happen. And that is why truth has no replica. Whether you agree with the truth or not, it always has a way of having consequences. That's why a lot of people and a lot of groups who go along with falsehood over time usually ends up with a lot of failure. It is in our interest not to be deceived by narratives, but to decipher and discern what is the truth and hold on to that.
And what's the truth?
I just explained a few things, because once you said what's the truth, in truth with respect to what? I said that with respect to that content creator, it's precisely that. The guy has no fault. He will tell you he's making a movie. He has absolutely no fault. He never said that what he's telling you is the truth. He's not on oath to tell you the truth. He's not. It could as well be drama. He has no responsibility to anybody to say the truth. What he is saying is that he could have been acting a movie. That people take it hook, line, and sinker, it's their responsibility. There are people, especially young children when they're growing up, and those who are not familiar, who believe that when they shoot somebody in the movie, the person actually dies. Is it the responsibility of the movie maker to say that no, the person doesn't actually die, that we are acting? It's not his responsibility.
How about public perception? Because in the center of all of these is about how every Nigerian feel. Proud to local refineries operation, like the Dangote refinery. Many persons were actually looking at how do we get to the point where our refineries are working, where the products can, be affordable, accessible, and all of that. So, but in a way, the confidence of Nigerians have dropped drastically, owing to the fact that the prices are still as high as it is now. The energy is not even affordable again, and all of that. So, the concern and the fears of many Nigerians is too, what are the future of our energy situation in Nigeria?
So, I was just talking about truth, and one of the problems that gave people wrong expectations is the way the Dangote refinery was reported. So the Dangote refinery, when they were coming on board, was reported as that they were going to drop prices. I remember coming on air on one TV station, that's about 3 years ago now, during the heat. They were not yet even good, and I said that from all the parameters that determine the price of the finished product, there is no indication that Dangote refinery, when it comes on board, will have any significant drop. And the interviewer got angry on live TV. And I said, look, you called me as an analyst. I will tell you what I understand to be facts as I know it on the industry. But that is where we are today. The reason why people have that expectation was just because it was being reported. And it was being reported on ignorance. The Dangote refinery never at any point said that they were going to reduce prices. What they said is that they were going to produce, and that they were going to produce locally, and they were going to eliminate the price of transportation via importation. So those were the promises. So it is left for people who are reporting to actually know the truth, analyze the truth, look at the issues, compare the parameters for determining the prices, and see the amount that will be eliminated. But more importantly, what we fail to realize is that the single biggest determinant of the finished product is the exchange rate to the dollar. The exchange rate of the naira to the dollar is not local refining, because the crude oil as a commodity will be bought at international pricing, whether it is bought in naira or dollar. So, for example, if you are selling cocoa, it's a commodity. If you are selling rubber, those are commodities. What are the characteristics of commodities? They are fungible. Their prices are uniform. That's why you have crude oil prices being uniform. So that crude oil price is being priced in USD. So irrespective of how they buy it, as long as the naira to the dollar keeps fluctuating, that will be reflecting on that. And so people must understand the part of this pricing that is related to the energy industry, and the part of it that is outside the influence, outside the circle of influence of the energy industry, so that you don't pour blames on the wrong place out of ignorance. And if people need that price to drastically come down, and it is all going to reflect, it's all going to be based on the naira exchange to the dollar. So, and I usually give this example. In 2005, I took a trip to Gothenburg in Sweden. That's the headquarters of Volvo, the Volvo car and all that. That trip cost about 190,000 naira. That same trip last year cost a little over 2 million naira. But guess what? At that time, it was about $1,300. Last year, it was still about $1,300. The difference was the exchange rate to the naira. So if I buy crude oil at $70 in 2005, there is what it will cost me at the pump. I'll buy it at the same $70 in 2025, and the difference will be wide. That is not an industry issue. That's an issue of national economics. So we should separate something that has a responsibility on the industry from something that has a responsibility outside the industry. No refinery is going to be able to work on that exchange rate. Nobody can do that. So when they keep talking about the price will drastically come down, the price with this, the price with that, on what basis? And the fact that people are running to town on that ignorance, and that is not going to turn it to knowledge. It's not going to turn it to the truth. So that's where people have a responsibility to know the truth about these things, rather than holding on to a narrative because it suits them and riding into town with lies.
So you now get to the conclude that removing subsidy and floating the naira, was not for the better of this country.
I'm not an economist. It's not my area. So I don't know. No, I'm telling you.
I agree.
Yes.
If we had removed subsidy and probably didn't float the naira,
let me tell you where I differ, because I have certain expertise. I understand it. Nigerians think generally that logic is the same thing as knowledge. It is not. And let me give you an example. The same water, most liquids in the world, virtually all liquids, in fact not all, except water, when they become solid, they reduce in size. Except the case of water. And that's why when you put water in a freezer, in a glass bottle, it breaks it because it expands. It's called the anomalous expansion of water. Now, if you have been dealing with liquids, you're involved in fluid mechanics and all that, you know that as a matter of knowledge. But if you are now discussing that with lay people, and you are telling them that this liquid is going to expand instead of solid, it's going to expand when it solidifies, what are you telling us? All liquids contact now. You think we don't have sense and all that. So it's an exception to the law. There are things that are exception to logic among those that are knowledgeable. So you cannot be using logic to question the decision and the contribution of experts. That's the point I'm trying to make. So when it comes to floating of the naira, managing the economy, the dynamics of all those kind of things, I'm not an expert in it. So I have to acknowledge my own limitation.
All right. And now let's get to how all of this can work, because there are those that are also blaming issues of pipeline network and the issues of the port. If government have a way to play around this in a better way, bringing down the price, does it work that way?
I said something. I said we owe it to ourselves to know the factors that determine the price.
Aside the exchange rate.
Exchange rate is a factor. So you can't say outside the exchange rate. Exchange rate is a factor. So when you look at the factors, one of the things you can't do really is speak to the regulator, speak to the refinery themselves, and then NNPC, Dangote refinery, that how do you arrive at your final price? Then you put all of them side by side and look at the factors and allow people to see, because that's what they do abroad. It's a responsibility of journalism. I say, okay, we want to talk to Dangote, please give us the parameters for your pricing. Then you speak to the NNPC and give us the parameters for your price. And if you find out maybe NNPC this thing should not be this high now, we compare it and all that, look at the cost for Dangote. You do all those kind of analysis. And there are also the smaller refineries too. You speak to all of them. Then you can know the price. And then people are not guessing. And people are not finger pointing. And you don't have malicious people misleading the public. The truth of the matter is that once it is factual, it is factual. Once it is science, it is repeatable. So if you bring out an analysis supplied by the people who are the players themselves, there will be no need for guessing, and there will be no need, because it's not exactly, yes, it's expert knowledge, but it's not exactly expertise in that sense. It's something that people with basic knowledge of mathematics can actually follow.
All right. Before we begin to wrap up, issues of tankers explosion in Nigeria is becoming very worrisome, claiming the life of many Nigerians. What is your take about all of these incidents? We've seen government trying to regulate the tanks movement and all of that.
Okay, so when it comes to people breaking laws, violating policies and all that, at the root of it, particularly for us, is culture. As long as we keep excusing and accepting and accommodating people who break laws as being smart, we will continue to have all these things. So a law was created for people, not people for the law. So if the people don't follow the law will be there, but it will be useful. The law is like the white lines on the road. The white lines on the road is supposed to give you a guidance on which part of the road you are supposed to drive. But if you have a drunk driver or somebody who is just lawless and he decides to drive in the middle of the road, it is not because the law is not there. And the police and the traffic warden are not on every area of the road. It's not possible. So if people don't obey the laws, and if people around them don't encourage them to obey the laws, you will be having the consequences of breaking those laws. So back to the issue. There are laws, there are regulations for all the tanker drivers. And one of the things that causes it, for example, is when people want to be smart. So you have a tanker that was allocated for diesel, and it's supposed to go for a certain route, and they put a little bit of time to ensure consistency and to ensure that the guy can rest. So the guy chooses not to rest in order to beat time. He decides to speed on the road in order to increase the time. So he has maybe a few hours at his advantage when he has dropped his product. So what does he going to do? He goes to load another product. But because he doesn't care and because he's ignorant, he will now maybe load petrol instead of diesel. So you have two chemical components of different flash points. That's different points. So if they are not giving you diesel, which has been laced with petrol, it is likely to catch fire or explode because the rate and you are treating it like it's diesel. You may not know that there's petrol there, but the petrol component that is there, because it is petrol, will always ignite at the flash point of petrol. That's usually part of what causes it. And in terms of and who are the people that do all these things? It's just like the people who manufacture fake drugs for their fellow human beings to take inside, knowing that they are setting up, but just because there is a culture that is not holding people accountable to what is right, is what is causing it. So the government can have all the laws, they can build all the prisons, they can set policemen, whatever, but if the people don't come together and say this is wrong and should not be encouraged, if we don't have a culture that encourages people to do the right thing, we will always have issues. They say in the corporate world that culture defeats strategy. No matter the strategy of government, if our culture does not speak against these things, it will be defeated.
Lord, sound very worrisome right there. I mean, issues before we wrap up of CNG buses or CNG vehicles, conversion as well, to question the effect of all of this, because some persons are still having feelings of subsidy removal, that government said we will have in CNG conversion, vehicles and all of that, but no effort really measurable to the expectation.
Well, the first thing is that what was the expectation? So because if you are going to be measuring, like you said, measurable to it, there has to be a standard. What was the expectation? I think when this kind of initiative starts, people don't ask the right questions. And because they don't ask the right questions, they come up with a lot of assumptions, and they turn the assumptions into reality simply because there are a lot of them that assume. The word assume is an English word which means to hold something as true without any proof. So CNG, let's say it's a fuel, just like petrol is a fuel. Why is petrol more available than CNG? Petrol, the supply chain for petrol is such that it has been built in Nigeria over maybe 70 years. So there's no local government that doesn't have a petrol station. For CNG to be available like petrol, first of all, it must have a station that is as many as that of petrol, so that as you are driving along the road, they don't have that. And it's going to take them time to have that. The second thing is availability of the product. Do they have as much abundant product available for use in the way petrol is available for use? I'm not sure they have that. And they may be working towards that. It's going to take time. So these are just basic things. You don't need a lot of intelligence to know this. You don't even need to be an expert to know this. But because when those announcements were made, people did not ask the right questions. They just said, oh, CNG, our problems are solved. It's not. It doesn't work like that. And the fact that they accepted that in ignorance is not going to change the fact of the matter. And that's why I said it is people's responsibility to discern between what is true and what is false. It's not external responsibility. If you go into a place, you go into a meeting room, you go into a seminar, you go into a church, you go into anywhere, and what they are saying is not true, and you accept it to be true, it's your responsibility. So no matter what comes from the air, in terms of mass media, no matter what comes on social media, people have an individual, personal responsibility to determine, to decipher, to check what is true. The old book says, listen to everything and hold on to that which is the truth. It's your responsibility.
So where then are the responsibility of the policymakers? Because every policies or intervention initiative is to better the life of the people.
Which is true, but it is, okay, for example, every politician is advocating a policy or something. But it's the responsibility of the people to determine who is saying the truth among them. It is their responsibility. So the politician A says he's going to do this, politician A says, B says he's going to do this. And you listen. It's your responsibility to discern who is saying the truth. It's not the responsibility of others to feed you with the truth.
All right. So the oil and gas consultant, always an excellent conversation having with you. You always have a different view from entire Nigeria. Probably it's because of knowledge.
Well, I don't know. I have a different view. I just speak based on my understanding.
All right. We do hope at the end of the day, because at the end of the day, what matters is how it affects the life of every Nigerian. Yes, a part of knowledge and ignorance may also be playing out, but policymakers should also understand that they hold the responsibility to also effect or brings out initiative that will positively affect the life of every Nigerian.
Totally agree with that.
Thanks so much for joining us on the show this morning, very briefly, and having an insight on that conversation. Thank you.
You're most welcome.